Welcome back to another episode of the Design, Build, Hunt podcast. I'm your host, Josh Raley with Whitetail Partners, Georgia. We've got Lee Dixon from Whitetail Partners, Tennessee, Tim Kaiser, Sam Billhorn, both from Wisconsin, and Jake from Michigan. Guys, welcome back.
Hey.
Good to be here.
There's that pause I was looking for.
Gosh. Every time.
I've got to figure out, there's got to be some kind of way to set it up where I got to know what to say there at the beginning. We just got so many people on the line now. But so this episode, though, excited for it. It's another property design breakdown. The listeners and viewers have spoken. They really enjoy when we do these. And I think it's one way that we can provide a ton of value for people. If you're doing nothing other than listening to the podcast or watching our YouTube channel, you can get a lot from these, learning general principles. I do always try to preface this by saying, just because your property may be in the same state, may be the same shape, may look similar to this property, may be the same number of acres, whatever, just because this property may look familiar to you as far as what you're used to hunting, does not mean that a design exactly like this is going to be best for you, your hunting style, and is not necessarily going to help you meet your goals. So every property plan and design that we put together is custom, not only for the land that it is on, but also for the landowner goals. And so I just always want to emphasize this. I would hate for somebody to put in, a couple years worth of work working towards a design that they saw, that they liked, and then implementing that design and being disappointed with the results. So I don't want you to end up there, but there is a lot for you to learn here. So Lee, I'm just going to let you take this one away. This is a 100-acre property, a bit unique. Not a ton of properties out there probably set up quite like this one. So why don't you go ahead and kind of give me a 30,000-foot view?
Yep. That's why I picked this one to run through, is just because it is a little bit unique, and I wanted to highlight a few things here for the viewers. But first of all, this is a Central Arkansas location. And, what I like to do with all of my clients, before I even set foot on the property, I want to zoom out and just assess the macro situation, the surrounding environment. What can I create, distinct value? How can I create distinct value on this particular parcel before I even show up? So when I zoom out here, this is Central Arkansas. So this looks like a lot of ag fields possibly, but the reality of it is, all of these are pastures. It's big cattle country right in here. Very, very little row crop. So when I zoom out, I see a lot of hardwoods. I see a lot of pines. So really, you've got just a flash in the pan of nutrition is what I'm seeing. You've got some larger treetops here. So you've probably got, some hard mass for sure that's growing in this timber all around this client's property line here. He does not own a whole lot of the timber. He does own some. So when I'm trying to create distinct value and I look at this, he has really good soils in this bottom. I'm thinking food. The DNA of this property is set up, just with some killer food. So I'm thinking, that early season, he's going to have some killer late season opportunities with this property because he will own the herds with this food when there's nothing else out there. So back to this, 30,000-foot view, I want to show you something here. So the neighbor's property right here to the east, you can see that they've recently, harvested their timber within the last 5 years for sure. And when we walked back here, we verified that. It's just a jungle. It was so thick, for sure housing a ton of deer on this property. So we're definitely going to be pulling a lot of our deer from this property. And the design definitely enhances that. So, this particular client, the oak trees on this place, you get a lot of swamp chestnut oaks on this place. And I'm telling y'all, these things were prehistoric. I have never seen trees this big in my life, oak trees this big, and the acorns were massive. Extremely impressive. I took a lot of pictures. I wish I could show them right now because it was truly amazing. So he does have some hard mass trees that he does own that I don't think it's ever been timbered. So there are little slivers of some hard mass that creates some awesome bow opportunities. Um, so talking about the food, we obviously saw distinct value on this property of really bringing the food and bringing it in multiple different ways.
Right.
Um,
Lee, before we get too far into the food,
yeah,
when you're saying distinct value, we're saying something that this property does that none of the other properties around it
that's right.
are able to do or are doing at the current moment. I'm curious, on this one, it's food. On some of the other properties that you've worked on, other clients that you've worked with, what are some of the other ways that you've said, hey, this is the distinct value on this specific property? Is it always
Sure.
food related, or what does that look like?
No, I mean, it just depends on the DNA of the property. It depends on the DNA of the neighbors' properties. We have a lot of times where, you just have one main arterial travel route that connects two different hubs that, hey, your property has an awesome, peak rut or pre-rut, peak rut type, arterial travel routes through it. That's when you need to be there. So your distinct value can change just based on your DNA, and those seasonal pattern shifts to the deer. They're going to respond, differently just based on the DNA of the property. So, this one needed food. Other ones may need more bedding. They may need more, security cover. This we are leveraging security cover from our neighbor here. He doesn't have enough to have security cover. You can start some regenerative growth in some areas, but he opted not to do that because he needs the rental income off of this front piece here. And it would definitely challenge his access by making regenerative growth out here. It would limit access to the backside of his property here. So
Right.
really cool. I try to leverage other values of other people's properties that you don't own, and that's what we do. We play our hand and we play off the neighbor's hands as well.
Yeah,
So
that's something that each of the designs that we've shown so far have all been kind of playing off of what's going on around the property. And that's where, I kind of want to point out to folks like, hey, it's not just about your ground. It's about the square mile, 2 square miles, 5 square miles around you and what that's offering to the deer herd and asking, okay, how do we tilt this scale in our specific favor?
yeah,
I think it's
amen.
important to jump in there too, just to say sometimes it may be someone's thought process to try and create all of those things, to check all of those boxes and implement that on their property, when in fact, and a lot of times property size can constrain this, but even the property DNA, as Lee calls it, that's going to dictate it as well. You need to work with what you have and leverage that and observe what's around you, not just try and recreate everything as if you can hold the deer solely on your property.
Yeah, that's really good.
Absolutely.
That's really, really good. And yeah, you try to do too much, you end up not doing any of it very well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's spot on. And you can see the access over here is so challenged. You can't see this creek right here, but boy, this creek was wide and it was deep and you can't cross it. So it was just, you're truly limited on access. And just like 99% of us, this gentleman was on a budget and, he wanted 5 to 6, main stand locations that he could hunt. He wanted some for his dad, that was aging slightly, and he wanted some easy access for his dad that they could hunt quite a bit. So, we're thinking observation stands that are very non-intrusive to the property. This neighbor right here, just in walking the property lines, we could peek over and see some stands right in the woods here. So we know that he's ineffectively hunting his property. We know that he's purging deep. If we could see, deer stands right on these property lines, he's coming a long ways through here, which is also, we're going to play that in our hand as well. So we know there's safety and security cover here. We know there's a lot of intrusion to the northeast here. So we're going to inherit a lot of his mistakes, and we're going to inherit a lot of this security cover over here. And then we know we've got nothing but cattle country to the south, and cattle just obliterate, all of this cover. So we're going to have a lot of deer, in this area, definitely late season. Once once the rifles start firing off, you'll be amazed at where they find security. So, anyways, let's dive into some of the access routes. The red here was that's accessing the back side of the property here, the east side. This is flat as a pancake, guys. This property is truly, there was not a hill on it. There was one levee. It was a man-made levee that was highlighted here all the way around. And boy, those deer were hammering that levee. We'll get to that levee here in a minute. But so really a huge priority for this client, like I said, to have some observation stands where they can quite frequently hunt and not intrude on their herd. They don't want to export, what little they have here. This property is extremely sensitive to intrusion. If you were to, be bold and build your bridges in here and start hunting some of these areas with already this significant pressure to your north, all you're going to do is just export your deer back over to a more safer environment. So we opted. Let's see. These stands here are, they wanted, more of a redneck blind, more of a blind scenario where they can have more scent control with the windows. They wanted, strong, window seal integrity. They could sit here quite often. And these are your shooting radiuses, obviously. But check out this food, dynamic right here. I'm going to zoom out real quick. We wanted a lot of tonnage, and you can see that more destination plot towards the center. And then we have more linear travel plots that, kind of form to the natural flow of how the deer are going to come and leave the property. We did a little TSI work here. There's no way we could get anybody across that creek, to actually harvest this timber, which it was mature. It very well could have been easily, but the creek, just nobody would do it. So we strategically made a TSI, this kind of a main artery from, the security cover back here where we saw a ton of deer sign coming on and off. We really wanted to enhance that travel to the food sources. And then when they hit this linear travel route more towards this destination plot, you've got multiple stand locations that's going to inherit that travel route there. We did, we want food diversity, not just, grains and greens. We want specific hard mast orchards, soft mast orchards. We did it up, and we want to bridge that nutritional gap with the food plot diversities, as well as these fruit trees and these hard mast trees. So you can see this food plot architecture here. This customer was a rifle and bow customer. He liked both. So you can see some of this architecture is designed to squeeze the travel routes down within that 25-yard radius, all the way out to 50-yard radius. So very strategic in how we designed, these food plots here. So any questions on that before we get into anything else?
Lee, one of the things I was picking up on, and you touched on it by talking about travel, but just to demonstrate how you can have food consistently throughout the length of a property, but focusing that on travel routes and having, whether it's your food plot selection, like you have that, I don't know what your variety than the darker color is there in the middle, but that's consistent all the way throughout the property. A lot of times I'm doing that with a clover or a chicory blend. And that makes a really nice walkway or travel plot, as we call them, throughout the property.
Yes, that is spot on. And I like planting, this type soil here is really, really good for, planting a soybean. And you can plant that soybean paired next to, that linear clover chicory plot, and it adds height. It adds that, I call it a false edge, all the way down through there. They feel secure with the height of that soybean. So they'll walk right down it just perfectly. And they'll meander all the way through. And they may, take a little off ramp here, and that's fine. I want to talk about that levee here in a minute. So don't let me run out of time, because that was a really cool feature of this property. But very strategic on that linear plot. And you can't tell this, but right here, there's a little bit of a low spot, and it's almost, you can't see it even almost with your naked eye. But I picked up on it. It's a little swag in this field that goes through here like this. And if anybody's hunted big bucks, and definitely in flat country, when they're traveling and, they've got this newfound sense of security through here with some edge, but they will oftentimes take those lower, lower little channels through a field like that to stay hidden. So we definitely utilized that natural little ditch that ran through this property to, stay with that linear travel route with that plot. So, and this stand can easily see, down into that little ditch, and he thinks he's safe, but he's totally not safe.
That's really good. Lee, I want to jump in and ask you about that specifically. So while he's safe there, you've got some other creative things. We talked about how, the distinctive value here is going to be food, but you've got some creative ways of getting cover onto this property. It may not be a large bedding area type of cover, but you're helping these deer feel very secure as they move their way through the property. Can you talk a little bit about the edge? The soybeans got me thinking there, because it's like, yeah, you've got a 4-foot, 5-foot wall of soybeans behind you, which, folks up in the Midwest grow a lot of soybeans, but boy, they get tall in the South with these long growing seasons.
Yeah, they will. So I want you to notice this has some regenerative edge right here. This side does not. We butted all the way up against the trees here, and wanted to create a very sharp edge, because, we're accessing some of this across this field. There's just no way around it. So we definitely don't want to enhance any, or encourage any bedding in here and let them see us access these stands across this field. So it's very strategic that we don't have edge in some of these areas. And then other areas, they do. This is actually switchgrass. And for y'all that are looking at the fruit trees, that's not in the switchgrass. We're planting in the field. But this is actually switchgrass that encourages them to walk. This whole levee right here, I guess it was a man-made levee for sure, just to keep that creek, at bay there. But that levee wraps from the highway all the way around, like this right here. And it was a high levee, and dude, they were walking up and down that like a highway. And there's bedding all over. This is natural bedding. This was all through that levee. But we did. This was not here. We were making a bridge. We're just gonna fill in. This is not. There's no current in this. It's just almost like a little oxbow or whatever, stagnant water. It's like a moat all the way around it. So we wanted to put an off ramp right on this point, because they wrap just perfectly around. And we wanted to let them off ramp right into here. So that was a really cool feature. But yeah, there's cover all around this new created cover. The deer they seem to be pretty safe. They feel pretty safe. They were naturally coming through some of these areas. This was an old cattle fence, so we cut some of the fence to encourage some travel up here. And then where there was some fences broken right here, there was some natural off ramps that were just a slam dunk for some of our setups. Definitely this one. I will get a picture of this gentleman holding a buck from this stand right here. There was already a scrape here. We put another mock scrape licking branch with a camera. He's pegging him constantly. He's just a year too young, and I think that deer has made it so far. So next year he will be holding horn from this stand right here. He can opt to shoot it with a bow or a rifle. It's a perfect little sabotage point right onto that levee, and we really encourage him to take that ramp off if he so chooses to. So awesome setup right here.
I love it. I love it. One more question that I want to ask that I feel like maybe viewers or listeners might be asking. Viewers, not listeners. They won't be able to hear this. But it's how many stands total do you have on this property?
It should have been 5, 2, 4, 5. That's correct.
So
Five.
five total stand sites on 100 acres.
Yes.
100-acre properties that I've walked down here, or a lot of them that I've been on before, have stand sites galore. Tell me a little bit about why you've limited yourself to 5 high quality, the 5 best setups,
Sure.
as opposed to having stands scattered all across this place.
Sure. And we preach sanctuary integrity to our clients, and that's a big thing. And like we're talking about, like this property, there's not a lot of sanctuary on it. This is wide open back here. Um, you know, we have to be really, really, aware of our intrusion on this property because you will be exporting quite a bit, and they definitely, if they saw this as a destination and you consistently hammered this, like, you're going to devalue these plots significantly the more and more you hunt it. So these stands are very strategic on their location that will minimize that intrusion on your plot. And obviously, we're only going into some of these places, at the best times, weather, seasonal pattern shifts. I do want to highlight one stand real quick. This one was kind of up on the property line. That main creek runs through, but we had a unique opportunity to cross this bridge and still be on his property here. And we could spike in and use that creek to wrap around and feel really, secure on our access to get to a point where we found some crazy good buck bedding in here. And this is an excellent, just straight due south, location. We needed some more south locations on this place. As you can see, there's a lot of northeast, type locations here, and not a lot of south. So we did want to get him. I love hunting that first south wind after a good cold front, and I wanted to find him some south wind locations. Able to find one there. So, but yeah, very, we maintain the sanctuary integrity of this place by putting them in the El Primo spots, and obviously limiting, when we do go in. Like this one right here, this one will withstand a lot of pressure for a lot of reasons. Highways are extremely noisy, and definitely an interstate like this, and your access, we just opted to walk almost right down, the side of the highway. You can get away with a lot by using highways. And this is way, away from pretty much all the deer activity up, in these bedding areas. Very secure. He's going to have his access, screened probably the last 100 yards when he has to come out of this little ditch. And this one can take a lot of pressure. And this is the stand that we allocated for his dad, because it was a big deal for his dad to hunt a lot. And I'm like, man, that northwest plot is your dad's. Like, he can hunt the fire out of that. Anything north, northeast, send him, and he'll be fine.
Right.
Yep.
Love it.
Yeah, I was just gonna jump. I'm gonna jump in there and just throw something out too. I've been
Sure.
watching here, and I think Josh touched on this earlier. It re-emphasizes the regional approach that we have with things, of how different every state is with their hunting seasons. Combine that with how unique every landowner is, And those factors are what lead to decisions that set this up. If you had somebody that was strictly bow hunting in the Midwest, they might be looking at this plan saying this may not work for his situation, and he'd be right. And I think that's what we need to understand is we take so many things into context when we're developing a plan that it's important to realize this is what fits this property, this landowner, this state, the seasons they have, all those factors.
Amen.
Right. What's that Arkansas gun season? They've got a pretty long gun season as well, huh?
I do not remember the Arkansas season.
Okay.
Yeah, but to your point, Lee, with Tennessee, for example, you talk about this a lot because you live it, is not pressuring locations and
Yep.
letting the neighbors wreck their ground because yours just keeps getting better throughout the season.
Oh, amen. Yeah, it's that's distinct value that I talk about. When you look at game laws or season dates, when you look at Tennessee's and you have 95 consecutive days, man, you really think sanctuary, you really think intrusion, which you think about that on everybody's property, but you're hypersensitive, when you have 95-day rifle season and you've got somebody on every corner. You really cannot be messing up on your intrusion and exporting those deer. They're going to get killed. So absolutely.
Right. I had an individual that I talked to the day before yesterday, actually, getting out, heading to his property on Friday of this week, and really excited to get to this property. It's a gem of a piece, and the guys have done a lot of habitat work on it already. Lots of prescribed burning, and just have just made it a really good wildlife area, but want to set it up a little bit more conducive for their hunting. Um, he was not able to get out and do very much hunting this year, just with family stuff, got busy, all of that kind of thing. And he said, "Man, I cannot believe the number of mature bucks that I've had on my property this year." He said, "We always thought we hunted carefully. We always thought we weren't, pressuring the woods too hard. Uh, but they've got, nearly triple, but definitely over double the number of mature bucks that they would be used to chasing around on this piece of property." And I think, as we think about, wow, 5 stand sites on 100 acres doesn't sound like a lot. We think about, hey, if conditions aren't ideal, looks like we're staying home that day a lot of times, going to go do something else. And people might be wondering, is it worth it? Yeah, yeah, it
Yeah.
absolutely is. And you had actually a camera pull on your place a couple weeks ago that really underlined that fact of how important that sanctuary is.
Oh, absolutely. We hadn't seen this buck period until I saw it 2 days before my son actually harvested the deer, but it was the largest deer on the property. And he was, I leave several cameras out. I run cellulars, but I run a lot of non-cellulars intentionally just because the video quality is so much better and you can, have a pretty lengthy video and not run your batteries down. So I set a lot of video cameras in the core of my property and just let them sit because I don't want to go down there and check them. And I finally did go down and pull this card, and I was, I wasn't surprised with what I saw. I saw every one of my target bucks, including this buck that we've never seen, just hammering this scrape. And it's a communal scrape, happens every year. It's a spot I put every year just because I know it's going to have a lot of buck activity there. But absolutely, man, there's no doubt that deer was, in that sanctuary, in that core area, because I'd never go there. I make my improvements over the next month when season's over in that territory, that segment of my property, and I do not go back in there ever. I enjoy going in there because there's so much deer sign, and 10 years ago, that's where Lee would be. If I
Mm,
saw that type sign,
yep.
dude, I would be all up in that. And guess what? I wouldn't have these type deer on my property if I continued to do that. I can kill them just as easy, getting them out in some of these major arterial travel routes. I can kill them, pre and peak rut in those time frames. I can kill them in my food sources late season. It's I don't need to intrude on my core to kill these deer. That's where they're safest. And you going in there is going to export your herd for sure and get them killed.
Right.
So
Right. That's really good. And that's, one of the things, we work with a lot of landowners, but folks who are working with a lease that they have, maybe they've got a long term lease or long term permission, or maybe they don't own the land, but they've got permission to do improvements on the land, and they ask, "Hey, I'm limited on what can I do? What can I do?" And one of
yeah,
the first things I always tell people is if you can't do a lot of land management, you can certainly do a lot of hunter management. You can manage
amen.
the way that you hunt that place. You can manage the way you approach it. You can manage that half inch of trigger pull, what you shoot and what you don't shoot on that property. You can do a lot to improve your deer hunting simply by having some self control,
Yeah,
and that can go a long way for a lot of properties, especially if you're limited on what you can manipulate on the ground. But man,
yeah,
I've got one more question for you before I kind of kick it over to everybody else.
yeah.
The joy of getting to host, right? I get to ask all my questions. If anybody else starts talking, I could just mute them, and you'll never know they were asking. But you and this, I think, is a really important um, feature to bring up, a really important principle of designing a property that has come up for me with this specific property, choosing not to improve certain locations. You had two factors that went into you choosing not to improve certain locations on this property. So I'm curious if you could just go into maybe why you don't do that. Because some folks might look at this and say, well, you got a lot of stuff here that you didn't, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Why don't you have bedding here? Why not more? Well, there's a lot of good reasons. You mentioned two really good ones. Can you go into that a bit more?
And I'm assuming you're talking about the west side bedding,
Correct.
maybe.
Correct.
Okay, yeah. So this gentleman, like I said, he's on a budget, like 99% of us are, and he needs all of this field right here to be leased out, just to generate income. So we're walking across, in some of these areas, just a wasteland and very exposed route through here up until the last little jag. You can see the screen. He did allow me to put some annual screen here, the last probably 100 yards to these stand locations. So we definitely did not want to encourage more bedding in some of these areas that we knew would just have a bird's eye view of us walking across.
Right.
Uh, this field. And when you have food, your does are definitely going to want to bed close to this food source. So it's going to be an ongoing challenge. So I did not want to have any additional edge in some of these areas, definitely not this destination type plot, because we're walking through here and this is one of the hottest stands. So absolutely, we opted to not beef this bedding up. Like, why would you want to put bedding here?
Right.
It's not going to benefit you, on your access. So
Right.
if anything, we did, like, this is destruction right here. There's a lot of bedding right here. Man, we just can't have that.
Mm.
So it's just the access was good on this property, but it is a little bit challenged, and you have to be careful. You don't want to set up a bunch of bedding that you're going to have to cross its path.
Right.
So we wanted to kind of emphasize more on the east side, and not even have a lot of bedding, improvements, because this is the property line right here, as you can see, and you can't cross this creek hardly at all. It
Mm.
was a little bit dangerous how we did it, but um, like I said, we're benefiting from the neighbors. He can't even hunt this. This is not huntable. That they just let it go, and it was so thick you couldn't even walk in it hardly. So they can't effectively hunt this. So why not just leverage that to our advantage, instead of trying to reinvent the wheel in some areas that just doesn't make sense.
Right. Right. Very good. Guys, anybody else have questions for Lee? Anything you want to point out?
I guess I'll go. I really like how you have, like Sam touched on this earlier. I love how you're moving these deer with food throughout the property. And there's one spot that stuck out to me. I know you said that that second stand or third stand from the north, that's a really hot spot.
Sure.
But I also like the one south of that. So if you pull down
Oh
a little
yeah.
bit, yeah, that one right there. I really like how you have that switchgrass planted pointing back towards the stand. And this is something that guys can take away from this and do on their own plots. If you're noticing that deer are kind of just walking through your food plots, they don't really have a pattern through your plots, just kind of wandering through, you can influence movement by planting structure within your plot, whether that's switchgrass, pine trees, fruit trees, miscanthus, you name it. You can put something in the middle of your plot to kind of cut down the sight lines. So now that buck has to work around that corner, but you can also kind of push him towards your stand location. And like you said earlier, they could cut that corner. Switchgrass is kind of a soft screen, so they can just walk right through it. But they're still going to follow that edge a lot of times if they feel comfortable. You're not pressuring the property, you're not pushing in too far. They're really going to follow that edge, and I think that's going to be another really good stand location,
Yes.
especially since you built that bridge over that levee.
Oh yeah.
They have never had a way or cross before, and they just follow that edge.
Yep.
Now you gave them the primary spot to cross that, and that's on a corner right there, like almost like an outside corner. They're going to that just points them, like both those edges point to that one spot.
Yep.
They're going to cross that bridge, feel really safe going through that switchgrass, even from the wood side, the cover side, hit that scrape. That's going to be another really good location.
Oh, absolutely. And notice it pinches it within bow range too, because this can turn into
Right.
You want a late season rifle opportunity. You want to shoot 300 yards. Here's your stand. If you want an early, bow stand, with a summertime pattern that you've got a big buck pattern in here, right here, you come right here. This is a great bow stand too.
I thought that would be a spot for that guy's dad just to sit.
Yeah.
So both that north second spot by the road, easy access there. But yeah, if you want to see a lot of deer, you want to get a chance at a really nice buck. Yeah, I thought that would be another good one for that guy's dad.
Absolutely. And the fruit trees, the soft mass trees encourage that off ramp. We definitely wanted a strong pull, from this area right here, because we know that's where the deer are coming from. We wanted a real strong pull, so we really ramped it up. But we don't have a lot of diversity, food plot diversity down here. This is all one thing, and it's all a linear plot. We want them to hit this and be like, oh, this is good, but I know everything in the kitchen sink is over here. So we want them to come through here,
the appetizer,
and meander around to the goods. So
one more thing I'd build off Jake's comment there with that switchgrass being a soft edge as it divides the plot, and Lee, like you're just describing, pushing it around. You could have a hard edge there, and if you have access to excavation equipment, you could either, if you have water there like that is shown by the levee, is that just stagnant water, you could dig that out such that there'd be water right out to where your mock scrape is, or create a berm in there, and they're going to be less likely to go over that berm and expose themselves. They go around it. So a couple methods there for those with access to equipment to consider doing, though the switchgrass is excellent. And also with the bridge as you have it, I really like that idea, by the way. That would have to play in as well. But a couple things to also consider, other ways of doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lee, I know we're supposed to be tough on you with this, but I love a lot of what you've done here, and something you touched on a little bit before, but I wanted to give you props for was, you have 100 acres, right? But if you really look at it, we have maybe 40 acres to actually manipulate and work with, and if you get hyper focused on the boundaries of the property, that's all you have. But deer don't care about our boundaries; they don't know about our property lines that we put in. And by differentiating yourself from the neighboring properties, you basically turned 40 acres of deer pull, and you tripled that, or even more. We have hundreds of acres now that you're really leveraging in your design without ever touching them. And I think that's really smart. And for a lot of landowners who maybe don't have enough area to do everything, I think that's the perfect solution.
Amen. No, that's very well said. I mean, you're playing off probably around 800 acres right here. That's what you're playing in right here. It's not just 40 acres. It's not 100. Play your hand with what's going on around you, and you can see it. This is all part of the equation. So that's very well said.
Right. Yeah. Well done, Lee. I love this plan. Guys, if you're listening to this episode and you want to get a visual for this, you need to go check out our YouTube channel. There's also a lot here that we just don't have time to cover. We'd have Lee here all night long trying to cover this plan. So if you got questions, anything like that, drop them in the comments of the video itself so that you can have somewhat of an idea of what we've got going on here. But guys, I think we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you for your time. Lee, thanks for sharing this plan. Folks, be sure to go catch up with us on all the social media networks and find us on YouTube as well if you want to see what we've got going on there.